Hello and welcome to another episode of Stories in the Room, where we go behind the scenes of the speaking industry to learn a little bit more about our industry colleagues, our challenges, our opportunities, the catalysts that brought them to the industry, and what keeps them here. And of course, joining me as always is my incredible co-host, Dr. Rod Berger, global storyteller, global journalist, and Rod, of course, my dear friend.
Yes,
Welcome to another fun conversation for us today.
I'm excited. I know it's been a couple of weeks, and doing my research on our guest. I think this is going to be a great conversation, and one actually that ties to my family as well. So I'll leave that as a bit of a teaser.
Ooh, I was just saying, we were just talking before the show, right? I'm like, this is what I love about these conversations with you. Even I don't know what you've dug up, so I'm really looking forward to it. And before we introduce our guest, as always, it is about stories in the room. So we always love an update on your story, my friend. What's going on in your world?
Oh, what's going on in my world? Well, I was saying to you off air that the image for my book, the cover, that has been rendered. So I'll be sharing that out later today.
That's
But what
exciting.
a process for anybody who has either thought about writing a book, has written a book or two. It is one of the most vulnerable experiences I've ever had. I mean, it's one thing to like battle yourself in sharing stories and then see your manuscript and then think, uh-oh, editors are going to see this now and other people within the publishing world, right? And then, uh-oh, my family's going to read it. My
Mm,
friends,
yeah.
people that I went to high school with, former teachers saying they can't wait to read it. And so you start to think, this is much bigger than just the screen I had in front of me when composing the manuscript. So that's
Mhm.
sort of the on the front of my mind. And then also that I'm collaborating now as a brand ambassador for Newt. I put this out yesterday. Thank you for your comment, Marjana. But
Yeah.
I get asked quite a bit to represent different brands and to help craft stories for them. And a lot of times it's just maybe not the right fit for me. But this is the right fit. And
Mm,
Newt's doing some incredible work on health and wellness. And it's not just I think in this country, there's this sort of we want to very reactive, right? We want to just fix things as they happen. But this is much more about our lifestyle and understanding the planet. And so it was a really good fit for me. So
mm.
Newt
Yeah.
is a place where I can now expand on stories that have to do with sustainability, not just of ourselves, but of our planet as well.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, we were talking about that, right? In the wellness space, there's so much to choose from, so you don't know. So it is great to have people in your own circle of trust that we could lean into and learn from. So I'm really looking forward to learning more about them through
Well, thank
you.
you.
Yeah. So, well, listen, we have a tight show today and very
We do.
excited. And with this guest, we want to make sure we pack in as much as we possibly can. Oh my gosh, Gail Davis. She is the founder and the principal of GDA Speakers, and they are incredibly strong, women-led, women-run, women-owned, right? Speakers Bureau for 25 years. And I think, Rod, when we were talking about Gail, one of the things that I loved most is sort of a piece of her story about the catalyst that got her into the business. And it was sort of someone throwing down the gauntlet for her and saying, and I will just, quote this properly, find someone that nobody's ever heard of, but no one would ever forget hearing from. And what
Such a
I
great
love,
line.
right? It's such a great
Yeah.
line. And I think any of us in this industry, I mean, just as it's evolved over the years, that's what we love about it. It's like, yes, we know that there are those celebrity speakers that are amazing too. You know them by name, you know them by what they do, but then it's also uncovering the gems, the different people. And this is something that GDA Speakers has been able to do. They've become a real thought leader partner to their clients. I think that's something we all talk about in the industry is you can't just be an order taker in this industry. You really have to be a thought leader, know what's going on in the marketplace, and really being able to be a guide to your clients. And that is something that Gail Davis and her team at GDA Speakers have done incredibly well. So with that, we'd love to welcome you, Gail, to this conversation.
Thank you, Marjana. It's so fun to be here. I'm really looking forward to these questions and particularly the tie-in to Rod's family. I am like super curious about that.
Well, let me tell you, Gail, we're going to work this like Rod is going to run with it and he's going to throw a
Okay.
lot at you and it's going to be great. But I have one question for you to start. We always like to start with a little bit of a lay of the land, industry speak, what is going on right now. And, with that, I'd love to know what are you finding is sort of the greatest challenge right now in the marketplace? As saturated as it is, it's a good thing. It's also a challenging thing. But what are you finding with your clients as one of the challenges right now in the speaking industry?
I think counting on loyalty from your clients. Um, People move from different companies. That happens. That's always happened. But now they have so much access online to going direct to whomever they would like to go to. And so it's like, how do you prove your value over and over and over so that you keep your clients? It's something that I'm really focused on right now. I don't directly sell to anyone, but I'm always looking at who are the clients that we had a long run with and now we're not booking with them and why. And so for me, that seems to be the biggest challenge because I
Ah,
want to get a client, keep a client, and think that they will never go away.
yeah.
And I just feel like you have to work for it every single time.
I mean, I love that you started there because it is something we've all been talking about a lot too. And when I think about it, I'm like all of the options that people have now, it's almost exhausting. So I'm kind of like, what is it with clients? Like if I were your client, I'd be like, let me find a good agency. Let me find that great agent who knows me that I could just call. You're my thought leader partner. I don't have to look elsewhere. So I know that the internet did this to us a bit, right? People started Googling and finding things. And now we're also seeing it with AI and people are now turning to ChatGPT, which is not the place to be if you really want to know about speakers who are good on stage and off stage, right? Can you
Right.
talk a little bit about that? Like how the change shifted because of technology, but maybe we need to how are we going to reel it back in then?
One of the things that I've always said to people is I know who looks like their headshot. I mean, that's just kind of one of my giveaway lines, and if you think about it, a speaker's individual website is the absolute best representation of them, as it should be. But in addition to that, if you work with a trusted partner who's been on site with that speaker, they can provide a lot of color beyond the packaged website. How flexible is this person on site? Just what is the overall experience going to be like? And so that is to me one of the really great values that we add. So,
Yeah.
but you're absolutely right. I was just asking the team before we started this question, what do you think some of the biggest challenges are? And they actually use Chat GPT. They go,
Mm,
people think that they don't need us anymore. They can go there and ask who the best speakers are. So we
yeah.
just have to continue to provide value with our wisdom on what we've seen with that speaker pre-event, during the event, and post-event.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, where the speaker can go deeper on things and how they can unpack something at different layer points. So it really is. It is about the relationships, building more of those relationships, going in deeper again, and really sharing with clients that you are thought leader partners. And that's the differentiator. And that's really what they want in this saturated market. So I mean, kudos to you and the team because you do really rise to that occasion. And I know you have great clients. And with that, I think some of those clients who will be watching this, and certainly speakers, want to learn more about you, Gail Davis, and your agency. So Rod, my friend, I
Yes.
kind of tip my hat off to you. Not that I'm
Okay.
wearing a hat, but you are, you're marvelous at this. I love to sit back and just listen. So I'm gonna, let you take it over.
Okay. We'll tango here, Gail. Uh,
Okay.
take me back, Gail, to the early days of EDS and talk to me about those initial days walking in the door, what you thought you were getting into, and your perception of events. Because I'd love to sort of understand the arc of where we've come from and where we are today.
So I guess I'm revealing my age when I tell this story because I went to work for EDS in 1979. I literally graduated from college on a Saturday and started my job on Monday morning. And I got connected with EDS through my sorority, Big Sis. And I had no idea what I was getting into. I went to work in Jefferson City, Missouri. And actually, when I walked in, they said, that's going to be your desk. All the materials are on your desk. You're giving your first workshop to a group of dentists in 7 days. Good luck. I mean, there was none of this warm onboarding, and I mean, it was a sink or swim situation. It was in 1979, it was right after Ross Perot had rescued the 2 employees in Tehran. Ken Follett wrote a book called On Wings of Eagles. So I knew I was a part of something magical. It was something extremely demanding. Most of the leadership at EDS had come from the military. And so, in today's warm and fuzzy culture, they say, we must lead, not manage. It's not a command and control environment. Well, they didn't have that memo at that time. It was very much command and control, but I would not take for it. I mean, I learned discipline. I learned how to get over having my feelings hurt. I learned how to be incredibly resourceful. And I worked there for 20 solid years. And I tell people often that there is no EDS today, but it still has one of the strongest corporate cultures you can imagine. There is a EDS alumni Facebook group, and people are just so engaged. So it's something that gets in your bones, or got in my bones for sure.
Well, what I think is fascinating, and I teased this earlier about sort of a family connection in this way, but so I grew up understanding incentive travel and merits.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And that's where my father worked for years. And then he headed up incentive travel for General Motors for decades. So that's just all that I knew. I knew that you would have an event somewhere around planet Earth and that you would have speakers and you had to get sort of that person that was going to sort of light the fire, right? And so when I saw that in your background, I just thought it's so interesting because I grew up understanding that word incentive probably much earlier than most would. But it does take me back to sort of the reason and the rationale we even do what we do, and to understand what role we play in the greater story that is motivation, incentive. What's your relationship to that word incentive, and how has that changed over the years?
So when I went to work for EDS, I was doing training. And then at some point, I moved to Dallas and I was a corporate recruiter. And then I think I had had my first child, and I got a phone call from a mentor, and he said, I think you should go over and apply for this job in the events department. It will be so easy.
It's a layup.
Yeah, that's funny. But I was responsible for planning I think my title was Director of Corporate Incentive Events. And I planned Inner Circle. Many companies have Inner Circle, President's Circle, Golden Circle, Winner's Circle. And I had such clear direction from the chairman of EDS that without salespeople, we were nothing. We didn't sell a widget. We were a service company, and we had to acknowledge and reward the top performers. And at that time, initially, it was only their spouses. It eventually opened up to partners, but that we also really had a debt of gratitude to these partners who keep things running at home while the salespeople are on the road. So we went above and beyond to make people feel incredibly special. So I love the incentive world. I was just in Hawaii last week with Mary Charles, who's world famous as running one of the best DMCs, MCNA, which she has now sold. But I made so many great friends planning incentive events. And it's a small world, and we all share that one thing in common: to reward those sales professionals.
Do you use that? Do you use that story or that background today in the way in which you manage newcomers to GDA, your team members? I would think that you would, right?
I think it's inherent, yes, but I do get reminded. I have a board of advisors meeting, and my sons are now old enough to be on the board. And so one of the discussion items at our last board meeting is, what are you doing to reward your top sales performers? And so, it's true. Those are the people you got to keep happy, and you wouldn't have a company without them.
That's right. That's right. Okay, so I want to shift over to recognizing talent, and really maybe not talent, but story. Look, of course, this is I'm biased in this area because this is my area of love and passion, which is story. But I do find that in this industry, for myself, so this is very subjective, but those that sit in your seat that I think are incredibly talented and last, they're much more than just sort of a flash in the pan. Is that
Mhm.
they can recognize story even when maybe it hasn't been revealed yet. And you have a very interesting past with this, and I think Flashpoint with Nando Parado, who was one of the survivors of the crash in the Andes in 1972 with the rugby team. Take us into that. And was it? Did you feel like you were riding a wave? Was it a jet stream that you sort of jumped on in that moment, and then you saw, wait a minute, there's applicability even beyond just getting to know this individual, but you were also selling him on his story, which is so much of what we're doing in this industry, regardless of technology or time.
Mhm. It's so true. So Mirjana already teed it up that the chairman of the company asked me to find someone new and different, someone, no one had heard, someone everyone would want to hear. And also, he tossed in a story that is global in its appeal. So back then, like this is 1994, so there was no Google, and there were video stores that had VHS tapes lined up alphabetically. And I, on a Friday night, saw the movie Alive because it was the first one up there. And I went home and I watched it, and I was so blown away with the story. And I thought to myself, no one's talking about this guy being a speaker. And wouldn't you love to hear what it was really like? So I went to some of the bureaus that I worked with and tossed out this great idea. And rightfully so, they cautioned me that just because someone has a good story doesn't make him a good speaker. Just because someone has been portrayed in a movie doesn't mean that someone would be a good speaker. Just because a book has been written about someone doesn't make him a good speaker. But I said, hey, wait a minute. I saw a documentary. And in that documentary, I saw Nando interviewed, and I saw the humility and the warmth that just oozed through the camera of him telling his story. And I knew he would be a good storyteller. He was an amazing storyteller. No one moved. You could hear a pin drop. You could hear the phone ringing in the back of the house, which you never hear at a large convention. He was not super polished. He had an overhead projector with some blank, flimsy films and some vis-a-vis markers, and he kind of drew drawings as he was talking. And it was just life-changing. I mean, obviously, I left my job. I started this company, and people wanted to hear that story. And I've really followed that understanding throughout the last 26 years. There's a handful of people that I have brought into this world and brought their stories to life because I just, the thing about great, great, great stories is Nanda didn't stand up there and say, let me tell you what I'm going to teach you today. Absolutely not. He shares his story, and you can take away from it whatever you want. And it's amazing because what I learned listening to him over the years is we all have our own Andys. You may have gotten a diagnosis
Well
last
said.
week. Your long-term marriage may have fallen apart. Your significant other might have been laid off yesterday. You may be deeply worried about your child. So you have your own Andys. Can you relate to being in a plane crash and frozen at 15,000 feet without food or water? Probably not. But by golly, if that guy could get through that Andes, that's going to encourage you and help you be hopeful for getting through your Andes. So that's what I love about storytelling.
I want that soundbite. That was so, I think, well said that we all have our own Andes. But you were also talking about it. I was going to ask you this. We live in this polished world, this soundbite world. This let's put an Instagram reel or story up where we just have a discrete amount of time and we all look perfect and we sound great and it sounds like we've just written an incredible script. Yet, what you're talking about the value of Nando was that it was the opposite of that. It was raw. It was organic, and that. See, for me, I think people want that. I think people want exclusive experiences, yet the industry that we all represent posits that you have to have everything that is packaged up, right? I mean, there are all kinds of vendors out there that will recreate an environment that looks like an actual stage, just so that the Gail Davises of the world will take somebody potentially more serious than not. And I think that there is a backslide effect to that with clients over time. Am I far afield on that? Or how do you see a world where we're so polished that everyone seems to have a top 10 steps to solving a problem? And that's the person, that's the man or woman that we want up there. When I don't know if that's what audiences really want.
Well, obviously they want a good communicator who can command the stage. That's important. But when these moments happen that surprise and delight, and they're authentic and they're in the moment, that's what people remember. And I recently told this story on another podcast, but you're so into storytelling, I think I'd like to repeat it. And it has to do with Magic Johnson. I mean, eloquent, polished, credible, known household name. But something happened once with one of my clients where he was out in the audience on one side of the room talking to the audience, and he kind of looked up, of course everything's on iMag, and he said, gosh, I'm spending a lot of time over here, let's call it stage left. And it was 3 big sections, and he said, I haven't spent much time over there. And he walks over, and this was not set up. He just notices this really tall guy who happened to be an attendee, an international attendee from Germany. And he's like, stand up. And he's like, did you play ball? And the guy goes on to reveal, like really emotionally that yes, he played ball, and yes, Magic was somebody that he admired and how honored he was to be there. Well, then Magic proceeds to get emotional and like takes a moment and looks at the audience and says, I grew up with heroes. And to think that today I stand in front of this crowd, and in this crowd is someone from another country who grew up calling me a hero, he goes, that will humble you. And so that can't be created. That won't happen again. So those are the professionals that are really great when they can turn a moment, and put the story all around it and leave people with this experience.
And hey,
yeah,
Rod,
please, Joanna, yeah.
I'm sorry. I want to jump in really quick too with both of you just on that, because just as you said, listen, in this marketplace, we could all talk about this really quickly, but in the marketplace, we have so many people that are trying to level up in different ways, right? And I think it's important to say that it's an opportunity there. Absolutely. They need to level up. It's great to have all the assets and put it together. But to Gail's point, you're going to see the ones who rise. You're going to know the ones, or if you don't, again, this is another reason why we need our thought leader partners, our agency, our agents to be able to share the knowledge that they have about these speakers, and knowing who really are those great storytellers up on stage, who really have the strategies also and are true practitioners of a space where they can educate and teach. So I just thought that was an important point to bring up too. And I don't know, Gail, if you see it that way too, because you come across so many more speakers now with great videos, and having to weed through that, maybe there's a different process for all of you. But how do you feel about it, this sort of shift that's happened in the industry?
One of the funny things, once I was at an event with a client, and we were playing 2 truths and a lie. And I think I said something like, I'm from Oklahoma, I can do the splits, and I never watch speaker videos. So they were all like, you can't do the splits. And I'm like, oh yeah, I can. That's my party trick. And people don't believe this when I say it, but I really don't watch speaker videos. I'm not going to say that you don't need them, and I'm not going to say that they're not important, and I'm not going to say that clients don't require them, but that's not how I sell. I want to talk to somebody who's seen you. I want to personally see you, and I want the whole package. What do you like to work with? How do you make audiences feel? How flexible are you? What am I going to walk away with? So I worry about some of these polished videos that make everybody look the same. And you can you can take some of these speakers and you can line up 10 and be like, was this shot at the same venue with the same audience?
That was a big event.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's great to showcase your skills, but there's so much more to it from my viewpoint.
Let's talk a little bit about the role, loosely use the word responsibility of bureaus and agencies in helping to support the cultivation of talent. That's something I don't hear a lot of. It's almost as if the speaker is, I guess, sort of ready to go, packaged and ready to go. And it's like any other industry, you sort of grow and you develop and you learn new skills, and there's sort of this professional development element, and you may find there's a new offering or a new product. But in this industry, I don't hear a lot about how we support the development, the ongoing development of speakers, whether that's from feedback that they're getting from clients over time and or changes in the market. What is your perspective on sort of the learning and development curve of speakers and the role that bureaus and agencies can play to support that?
The first thought that comes to my mind is the incredible responsibility that I believe I have and my team has to give speakers feedback. Now, when it's great and the survey comes in and everybody's getting 5 stars, am I always great about passing that along? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But what I take so seriously is when they miss the mark. And, that's not a fun conversation to have, to call the speaker up and say, okay, you missed the mark. Here's what the client's saying. And nobody wants to do that. But I learned so much about the integrity and the real reason that people are in this business when I make those calls. There's been the occasional person that's like, well, that's just my deal. That's how I do it. And I'm like, okie dokie, probably won't be working together
Won't be
again.
booking you.
And then, most recently I had one of the toughest conversations, and that person was just like, this is such a gift. I had no idea that that particular thing could have come off that way. I know that's something that I do, but I didn't know, oh my gosh, I have to rethink it. And just every piece of feedback, which sadly in this case, there were quite a few bullet points, she took as a gift. And I know she'll be better for it. So there's no program you can pay for that will up your game, like really being willing to go through feedback when you don't, when you do miss the mark or when you don't make the mark, however you want to say that. So important, and it's tough. And it doesn't happen a lot, but I take that very seriously.
Gail, when we think about topics, right? We live in a very convoluted world right now where it feels like every other day there's a change in potentially what can be said, or areas of focus, or departments that either have a label or don't. And I'm wondering if for the speakers that are watching our discussion today, what's your advice for either sticking to sort of their area of expertise and or feeling that nudge or the pull to acquiesce to a different environment based on this perception that we don't want to talk about leadership in that manner, or we need to shift to a different perspective. Because I hear from speakers behind the scenes, and it just gets a little bit mind numbing to think that they're having to sort of change and shift away from what their, I guess, core competency might be.
I have two thoughts that go through my head. One, as an agent or someone at a speakers bureau, if the speaker has too many topics, it's just overwhelming. That's the only word I can use. You just you sit back and you go, what do they talk about?
The Cheesecake Factory
So
menu kind of thing.
yes, yes, yes. And so I think my first thought is don't overwhelm, be clear on what you offer. I mean, Nando Parado is an inspirational speaker, period. Period. That's it. We don't, and that's so simple. So he's, I mean, okay, maybe he's leadership too. Okay, leadership and inspiration. But I just think really trying to know your lane. I mean, think of some of the great brands in this world who have just always been so clear on who they are, and they don't try to be something else, and they've sustained for a long period of time. Now, obviously, there's this whole thing around the DEI situation, and I think you have to be smart. I mean, you have to take a look at it and say, is it Risha Grant? I did a whole blog post, I think, on her and how she's a big DEI speaker, but she's changed her narrative ever so slightly. She didn't change her content. She just called it something different. I think maybe it was belonging or something, but she was smart enough to know that there's no reason to go out with the whole DEI is your only thing right now because it's so sensitive. So, but I was impressed with the way she communicated that, because it wasn't like she said, oh my gosh, I'm just going to change who I am today. She slightly changed the packaging, but she did not change who she was. And I think that's the subtle key thing you have to be careful about.
The context is important.
Mhm.
I hear that it's not from you, that it's not really about eroding sort of the value that you provide. It's just understanding your audience, really, when you get down
Right.
to it. So clients, I would imagine that since your days at EDS, that clients have changed in their perceived, I guess, awareness and or knowledge base around what we can provide from as an industry, and that then would beget maybe a different set of questions when they're calling you and what they're looking for, how they're wanting to plug in talent that you represent and work with into their sort of their sequence of leadership development or whatever that sort of campaign may be. Have you noticed that the questions get better, that they're more discerning in what they're looking for, or do you find that you have just as much of a role as an educator as you ever have?
I think it depends. The corporate clients are so savvy and they're so connected, and so and so works here for this big name, and then they move over here and they take that knowledge, and then that person moves over here. I mean, they've got it down and they're talking. I mean, come on. They're saying, here's how much I paid, here's what it was like to work with them. So the corporate client is very, very sophisticated. We also do a lot of nonprofit work for big fundraisers. That's probably one of the more challenging situations that we're involved in, because oftentimes your chairperson rolls in, their name is on this big event, and they've not really done a lot of hiring of speakers. They don't really know exactly how it works. They're spending a lot of money, their reputation's on the line, and there's a huge opportunity for frustration, particularly when it is a celebrity and you're not always able to get them a quick response. So there's more education in that setting. And then we do a lot of work with EO, the Entrepreneur Organization, and YPO, the Young Presidents Organization. And there's a big opportunity to educate there, because you've got business owners who are members of an organization who are volunteering to plan programs, and their day job is probably manufacturing something, or just something. They have no event planning experience. So I love those clients, because they tend to go, why would I try to figure this out if you all have been doing it for 26 years? Why don't you just help me?
They
And
recognize your
that feels
expertise.
so good.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, the balance there is it's equitable in understanding the value that each party brings to it. We've gotten a few questions, and one that I think is important, but I'll sort of give a little bit of a preamble. Right now, with economic turmoil and there's a lot of sort of starts and stops, I'm hearing from the corporate side of things that we're just sort of holding off on programs that maybe were in the pipeline. So, with that as sort of that our backdrop, what's the recommendation for speakers and how they should, like, sort of the repetition or the rhythm of correspondence with bureaus and agencies out of that sort of that when you don't hear the phone ring or you're not getting the email, like, how do you maintain that professional relationship and also support those that are representing you, I think, in a professional and thoughtful manner, because we're all going through some instability.
I think it's a great question, and I hope every speaker listens to my answer. I think the important thing is to know your individual client and ask them, how would you prefer that I communicate? We have streamlined this process here, and everybody looks forward to Friday morning at 8 a.m., where we get a digest of what's going on in the speaker world. Who has a new reel, who has a new fee, who's offering an incentive, who has a new podcast release. I mean, it's all in one spot. We can read it. It's pertinent. It's put together by our team, and everybody looks forward to it. If she was 1 minute late, people would be like, where is this? That's efficient. And one of our core values is efficiency. So if every speaker is, every time I accept them on LinkedIn, they're sending me their deck, I'm like, please, I don't want it. What am I going to do with it? How am I going to get it over where it needs to go? Just ask them what the process is. Now, clearly, if you're in a proposal and you've been talking to an agent and it's kind of gone quiet, and what is a period of time that it's reasonable to ask? I don't know. Maybe things were hot and you were talking a lot, and then all of a sudden it's just been 3 weeks and you haven't heard anything. I say, ping the agent and say, is this still on track? And there are instances where we flat dab don't know. I mean, yesterday I had a strategy session with an agent, and she brought me like 4 examples where she's like, I mean, everything was going great. And she said she loved the ideas, and she said we'd know next week, and she's not responding to my calls. So we're trying not to make up stories. We're trying to just see, there is some uncertainty, and I've been through uncertainty before. And I think just like speakers shouldn't bug agents, agents have to be careful not to bug clients. So we're all trying the best we can to figure out that cadence of follow-up. And it certainly helps when you have an existing relationship.
Yeah, and to be in the moment, I think, and recognize that everybody's dealing with it from different perspectives and vantage
Yes.
points. One question that we have is from Krista, who wants to know the top 5 things that 2025 clients are coming to you and your agents with. Could be a topic or a problem, but what are you hearing if you had a sort of a list of the top 5?
Golly, Krista, good question. You could
I
have
know what you're
given
doing
me a
this
little
afternoon,
heads
Gail.
up. Top 5. What would they be? I mean, people are definitely asking about AI. I mean, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But we have to immediately turn around and go, hey, AI is super broad. Are you looking for Gen AI? Are you looking for how to utilize AI? Are you looking for the intersection of AI and neurolinguistics and how we all mentally prepare for these changes? So one of the things we have to do when we get a broad question like that is kind of redirect it. I am hearing that people are a little concerned about budgets. So maybe last year they spent 50K and they're like, what can we find this year for like 35 to 40? So I think looking at a budget change, leadership never goes away. You just add the current problem to, we need a leadership speaker on AI. We need a leadership speaker on uncertainty. We need a leadership speaker on the economy. So leadership never goes away. Innovation continues to be something that people are asking about and interested in. And then I would say sales never really goes away because, we started our conversation there talking about incentive trips and how if you don't have if you don't have salespeople, you don't have a company. But specifically yesterday, I was involved in an interesting conversation about a topic for salespeople. And the client said, we're asking more of our salespeople. We're asking more than we ever have. So they're being real aware that, it's okay to bring in a speaker who talks about mindfulness and resetting in your energy levels, because they want to care for the total human, and not just, they know they can't just ask people to grind. So they want to ask them to grind, but give them some tools for now,
Yeah.
And then, I think resiliency has remained strong since the pandemic. I mean, people are continuing to just want to make sure that people know the importance of being resilient. So I don't know, Krista, was that 4? Was that 5? Was that 6? I was just rolling.
I think that was a good list, I think. Jason asks, he's going back to the show reels. So if a reel, if it's problematic to sort of know the origins of the reel, right? If it's real, authentic or not, what is the most important material that you would say should be a part of a speaker's toolkit? I know that's an overused term.
In addition to a video.
Yeah, like if we're dealing with, if that's problematic.
Yeah. Okay. And it's, okay. So I would say clarity. Clarity. What do you speak on? What is your keynote? And can you give me a description? I would prefer not to see 7, 8, 9, 10 keynotes. Like, I'd prefer to know there's this one, and this one, and here's what they are. That clarity and then takeaway. That's one of the biggest questions I think that our clients ask is like, oh, they sound amazing. Oh, that's a cool story. What is the audience going to walk away with? What's the takeaway value? What transformation will they see? So I think clarity on that. When I worked at EDS, we had an infamous founder, Ross Perot. And in our new employee orientation, they said to us, you should always have your elevator pitch ready, because Ross will get on the elevator with you one day and he will look at you and say, who are you? I'm Gail Davis from Altus, Oklahoma. What are you working on? And you better have a good elevator pitch, because if you can't answer that question, he'll go back to his office and say, can somebody find this yahoo from Altus, Oklahoma who isn't working on anything?
So
And
then you
that's
have to share
always
that. So
stuck
Gail,
with
were you
me.
in the elevator with Ross Perot, and did you have to give your elevator
Many
speech?
times. Yeah. Yeah, many times.
I want to toss it back to Marjana. I know there's a question around incentives.
Yeah. Yeah, Gail. So this comes from Diana. And before we have you answer, her specific question is, what incentives can speakers offer that would be of great service these days to clients, right? But I also want to piggyback on it, this idea of something we're calling a speaker in residence program. And you've probably seen this already. As a speaker gets done with their keynote, the client wants to bring them back for 6 months of virtuals to keep the energy going, keep the ideas going. This is something that we have not booked often in the industry, but it's something that I know I've been having a lot of conversations with different colleagues on. How do we bring this to the foreground and be able to package something like this as an incentive in a bigger way? And we know that the problems are that sometimes the buyer for the keynote is not the same buyer for something like this. Sometimes agents are like, I don't want to make it an upsell, but it shouldn't be looked at as an upsell. It should be looked at as a value add. So there are things around that that I'd love for you to sort of give us your thoughts on.
I'm having a real live experience on this. So I am in EO Dallas, and I'm going to be their learning chair for the 3rd year in a row. And the new president, very clear with me, like, you can pick all the speakers, but here's what I want. He said, we have 160 members, and typically only about 100 show up at the events. So I want it recorded. I want it recorded so that those who had a conflict can watch it. Those who loved it can show it to their leadership team. Those who loved it can show it to their kids. And I'm like, oh boy, now all of a sudden I'm going to be the client asking the speaker for this. But I started thinking about it, and I thought, that really is good value. All these people are equally paying dues to EO Dallas, and they can't all go to the events. They're traveling on business, but why should they be deprived of that message? So guess what? All the speakers we booked for next year, they all agreed, password protected site, limited period of time, internal use only, whatever all the buzzwords are. Then the president said to me, I'd like to have a follow-up session. We have a member who has a fantastic studio. And he said, I'd like for the speaker and one of the people who was greatly impacted by their message to record I don't know if it's going to be a visual podcast. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but we're going to have a recording, follow-up recording. That's what we'll call it. With the speaker, just to kind of bring home what the impact was. And so it was funny because I'm in this industry and here this president of this member-led organization was like, this is important to me because we spend a lot of money on speakers. So how can we make it last? How can it be more than just a Thursday night 45-minute talk? And honestly, when I first heard it, I think the GDA Speakers, Gail, thought, oh gosh, here we go. Oh man. And all the speakers were so agreeable. And I'm really, really eager. You'll have to have me back a year from now to talk about how it works. Like, are we really going to follow through and have these post recordings? Am I going to hear from people like, oh my gosh, I got to watch that with my kids and I loved it, or thank you for recording it, my execs loved it? Or is it something that was a great idea and it won't really last. And I'm not going to have that information for a year, but
Mm.
I
Yeah.
think it's going to be very successful.
Yeah, there's more to it. Absolutely. And back to that thought leadership, thought partnership, right? I think there are a lot of speakers who want to be that for their clients. There are a lot of agents who want to be that. And this is coming together and figuring out how to make it work and what the best way is.
Mhm.
Are there any other smaller incentives that speakers can provide to clients? Like even those takeaway sheets or anything, the leave behind things that people used to do. I don't see them doing as much, but are you seeing any creative things from speakers that's really working these days?
I mean, I think people really appreciate it. I mean, this is so basic and I think everyone's doing it, but when you have a really good speaker and oh my gosh, everyone's taking pictures and they're trying to write notes. And then the speaker's like, don't worry, I'm going to put a QR code up here and everybody's getting the deck. I think people really appreciate that. I know at our last IASB, now this is the funny part, I requested 3 decks. They're all sitting in my inbox and I haven't done anything with them, but at least I know they're there if I get some bandwidth. Bandwidth's the problem on all the follow-up stuff, as it always has been. You find your way to the conference, you make it to the ballroom, you listen, you're inspired, you write your notes, and then when do you find the time to?
Yeah. That's such a great point. And it ties into that idea also of like, we who sit on this side who bring speakers to you, the agents, and say, hey, here's a great speaker. Here's a great speaker. You can say, that's great in the moment you're sharing it, but how does it stay on your radar in the moment you need it? And then there are only a few ways you could get around that. It sounds like your team there is doing it just by even those Fridays. Like you just have to just keep reminding each other, putting people on the radar, here are the highlights. And I think it's up to every agency, like you said, Gail, to figure out what works for your culture internally. How does your team, take in that information? And I love the fact that you guys are excited that, is it Michaela that puts those together for you?
Oh, it is. Yeah.
Oh,
I
Michaela,
wasn't going
you
to
don't
say
have
her
to be a
name
minute
so she
late.
doesn't get hounded. But the other thing that's very active here is it's a Slack channel. I think, is it called sales? Yeah, sales. And so someone will go out in there with a very specific question, like they're asking for this, this, and this. And it just warms my heart to sit back and watch all the ideas fly. So, and I don't know if this is appropriate to say or not, but we really changed our compensation structure here so that this is a sales organization. So every single person gets a piece of the pie. So when it comes up on the channel like, hey, they're looking for this, everybody has a vested interest to go, oh, I think this would work. What about this? I saw this yesterday. We proposed this person. Look at this feedback. So there's a lot of energy around that.
That's awesome. So it's like a pooled commission stream to some degree.
Mm-hmm.
That's great, Gail. Yeah.
Yeah.
Rod, I want to give you, I know we thank you, first of all, Gail, for your time and giving us.
Oh, I've loved it. It's so fun. So energizing.
Oh, so good. Rod, my friend, I'm sure you had a few other zingers or things.
Zingers. I do have one. I have one last question for Gail. Big picture question. So in the entrepreneurial world, I've had the honor and the experience of interviewing thousands of those that have done some pretty incredible things. And I've always sat back and thought it was fascinating psychologically for those that after they had their first big win or the unicorn or whatever it was, their exit, that some of them embraced the pursuit of the second, while others struggled because they felt they were defined by their lack of capturing that second win. Now, you had Nando years ago. What is your North Star since that flashpoint? And does it tie into sort of what gets you up in the morning in the pursuit? Is it something that you think about and celebrate? Or have there been times where you've thought, where's my next Nando? Where's that next sort of speaker that I know a pin's going to drop?
Well, I mean, there's only one. So he is so incredibly special. And what I'm most proud of is the genuine friendship that we have. I think there's North Stars even within his story. This past year, he was in town for our 25th anniversary. He was also on that same trip. He spoke for the SMU Tape Lecture Series, which we pitched 25 years ago. So that was always something that was out there. Like, I'm going to get him on that. I'm going to get him on that. And then it was just beautiful that he came in to celebrate our 25th and he spoke there. But there have been other people along the way that I have run into who are not speakers, and I've been able to share their stories. So, Rex Lewis Clack, he was blind, autistic, and a musical savant. He was on 60 Minutes 3 different times. I reached out to him, well, his mother and Rex, and probably booked them close to 100 times. And there's a mother and daughter, Christina Wanzelak and Constance Curry. They wrote a book about Christina's drug addiction called The Lost Years. I heard them at a church in Colleyville, Texas. I said, I own a speakers bureau. They thought I was selling audio speakers. They had no idea there was a speaking world out there, and I've booked them over 100 times. So I've always followed it. I think, Nando's story is very, very unique in that it just kept getting retold. The 1992 movie, his New York Times best-selling book, Society of the Snow. It just never stopped because, the interest was always there.
I love that. It says so much about just you, I think, as a person and a professional in your willingness to allow, I think, inspiration to come from all walks of life, and that then your audience and the clients benefit from that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah. Gail, thank you so much. By the way, I love that you also shared here that clients are asking or people are saying, I want to share that with my kids. I've been hearing that too. Like meeting planners today are looking for speakers who can engage their people in better work, but also can give them something that they could take back home to their families. I think that's really exciting sort of shift that we've definitely been seeing in the industry, right?
One of the things in EO, we identified several events that we told our members, please bring your children age 13 and above.
Wow.
And that's a big value, because it's not just all about business, there's a lot more.
Yeah. Yeah. And everybody's sitting at work also just stressing out because of family stuff too. So the more we can engage them together, the better. Thank you again for all of your time,
Oh, you're
Rod.
welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I mean, really,
Absolutely.
and I hope that people will share this around because you really gave some great sound bites. We'll be sure to be cutting some of those up to share back with your team too, and your team can use what they like of this as well. But thank you so much for your time. And of course, Rod, thank you for digging in deep and helping us all get to know Gail and the GDA team a little bit better.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Gail. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. So nice to meet you. Bye, Marjana.
Take care. We'll see everyone next time. Thanks.